my surname. Yeah, Chronicles of Narnia. That means lion. And a cool surname for a military person, maybe. I was an army major. I served for 13 years in the army. And I worked in...
Which army?
Say again?
Which army?
Turkish army.
Okay.
I served for 2 NATO headquarters, one here in Norfolk, Allied Command Transformation, and the other an operational core of NATO. I attended 3 separate international graduate programs, one in Middle East history, one in international security, and the last one is Old Domain University International Studies program. I am a PhD candidate here. Well, I work on cyber conflict. My dissertation topic is, as you see, international relations, and let me put it better. State-based cyber attacks against enterprises, a case study of Iranian cyber attacks for developing a risk assessment methodology for enterprises. So that is my research topic, but how did I come to this kind of a topic? Well, it started with a class paper last year. I was working on cyber attacks and relations between countries. That was a basic, a simple one. I was just trying to understand, is there a pattern between the good relation periods and bad relation periods and cyber attacks of states? So I used 2 data sets. First one is, I guess most of you are familiar with the dyadic cyber incident and disputes data set. And the second one is, well, it's like this, a very well established data set, includes the period between 2000 to 2018, 14. I used the 1.1 version of this data set. The second data set I used is the one I created, as you see at the right side. It is focusing on the relations between United States and 4 other major offensive countries in cyberspace, who are Russia, China, North Korea, and Iran. And it includes the same period. Well, this is a closer look, and here is a more closer look for the data set. I designed periods of good relations and periods of bad relations type of classification. Good relations is 1, bad relations is 0, and I focused on this 18 years of period to understand every single nations among these 4. Relations with United States. I looked for some new starting point that changes the nature of the relation between 2 countries. Let's talk about this example. In 1997, for example, in Iran, the reformists came to power. And then it changed also the United States behavior against Iran. In the year 2000, we have an unofficial US apology for the role of United States in the throwing of Mossadegh period. And we had also some more concrete results that we see in the year 2000. Clinton administration partially lifted the sanctions against Iran, and the relations just got better. Both sides had accepted a change in their relations. So I named this year as 1. In the year 2001, we had 9/11 cooperation in Afghanistan. Both sides were in good relations, another good relations period as 1. And in year 2002, President Bush just decided to name Iran as the one in axis of evil. So it turned to 0. What I did is, I did it for 4 countries, and then I just tried to see if there is a relation between good relations and cyber attacks. I used basic statistical analysis like panel data, fixed effects. I could not see a pattern of state-based cyber attacks. So the reason was, to my understanding, this data set was, as I said, a very well established one, but still relatively a small data set. For example, for China, who is the biggest initiator of cyber attacks, we had only 45 attacks, and for Russia that was like 23, and for Iran 17, and North Korea 8 or 9 something. So it did not give any idea about the overall state behavior in cyberspace. And when I tried to, as I said, when I tried to get even dig deeper, it gets even smaller. So that was a negative motivation for me to find a solution to shape this kind of data sets in flesh and bones. What did I do? I came up with this research question. How can we assess the cyber risks posed by states against enterprises? So it may look like I am even narrowing the data set. But what I'm doing is I will try to create my own data set of enterprises attacked by one single country, which is Iran. You will understand better through the slides.
Before you go on forward, just can you tell us a little bit more about, in your data, does it say which actor in the state is doing the cyber attack? For example, the army or the intelligence community? Do you have a... Well,
this dyadic data set basically uses the public information, and it just does not only refer to the, for example, in Iran, it doesn't refer to the Iranian Revolutionary Guards attacks, but also some very specific proxies that Iran uses. So proxies and state actors in these terms.
It goes off the like the MITRE ATT&CK threat actors.
Say it again?
The MITRE ATT&CK frameworks, they're threat actors for advanced key groups.
So you mean, does that include this kind of...
Is that the threat actors that you kind of the
yes.
attackers that you're talking
Yes, threat actors are basically state actors, and the ones that they motivate, they push, or they pay, which are the proxies, like Red Kitten in Iranian example. So, my hypothesis was that the cyber attack decisions against enterprises by states are made in accordance with national security policies. What I'm saying is, data sets mostly focus on the attack patterns, namely the results. What lacks is the motives behind these attacks, which we can read through the tools of international relations. So, I believe that this technical level research on cyber attacks needs the touch of international relations. So that's the point I get in. I bring, these two are actually pretty much shaped together. These are not evaluated separately in international relations field. And, well, I will also focus on cybersecurity. And an extra point, I will use risk approach. So why risk approach? Because I will work on the cyber attacks against enterprises, corporations, transnational or multinational corporations. And this approach and IR has mutually complementary features. They will have each other. If I give examples from the IR, international relations, some strengths of this field, like the actors of international field are also almost the same actors of the cyber international space. Because, as you know, cyber attack ability is, or a sophisticated cyber attack is actually a scarce resource. to use such a scarce resource, the decision to use such a scarce resource is made by the strategic level. Because if, well, when it's used against United States government agency, it's kind of a one-time shoot. It's not like you can use it again at this side and at this side. So it is a scarce resource, and the decision is made at the top level, which also the international relations focus. And international relations has a large foreign policy analysis literature, and also a big body of knowledge on state motivations and behaviors. But international relations needs risk approach because it has some difficulties to adapt to the features of cyberspace. We, scholars of international relations, still try to read this new environment with our conventional or traditional tools. But this is a new space. It changed. It has different features, and it really does not fit exactly to the one that we already knew or used. And another weakness, we are too much focused on threat-based approach and rational actor theory. I will talk a little bit more about it. Why is that a weakness in cyberspace? And very shortly, international relations so far kind of kept away from risk studies. Just some terms borrowed or adapted from sociology was used in our field, like Anthony Gibbons and World Risk Society, or riskization, like securitization. That was another way of naming the securitization. The time that international relations got closer to the risk assessment or risk management was the political risk, and that only served the economics, the companies or the private sector, just to understand or just to give an idea about the discontinuities of some governments or some states in terms of making investments on these countries like that. So international relations kept away from risk. And which risk approach am I or do I intend to use? I guess you know NIST, National Institute of Standards and Technology, is tasked by United States government to develop information security standards and guidelines. This is mandatory, mostly mandatory for federal agencies, but also private sector is prone to use it. Some companies like to use the NIST frameworks about risk management or cybersecurity, critical infrastructure framework, or guide for conducting risk assessment, because it also complies with the requirements of ISO, International Organization for Standardization. And my last question, why Iran? I focused on Iran's cyber attacks. So why Iran? Because Iran is one of main four offensive countries in cyberspace. If Russia and China are tier 1, Iran is a tier 2 country. And it's actually a little bit more interesting than Russia or China for me, because it has a different nature. Sometimes Iran boasts about her cyber attacks. Sometimes she may target, for example, a casino in Las Vegas or an airline in Italy. So it has, when it comes to China, it is kind of more monotonous. Never boasts, never reveals, and mostly about espionage or commercial information. But when it comes to Iran, if it's related to the home, Iran just gets a nationalist stance. If it's about the region, it's a sectarian country. And if it's about the globe, about the whole world, Iran can be an anti-imperialist and Islamist country. which is reflected in its cyber attacks pattern.
So I have a question.
Yes, sir.
That just causes an interesting idea about, in terms of international relations, that we now see China as it emerged is becoming a bit of a status quo power. It likes the world to be prosperous because it makes China more prosperous. The theory would be certainly more than it was during the Mao.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So, is there such a thing as a status quo cyber attack? China does not attack, for example, in a sentence you used, doesn't attack the Italian airlines.
Yeah.
It would make no sense. China's cyber attacks, if you will, are for improving China's position in the world, but it doesn't want to destroy anybody.
Yes.
It is there to improve its position relative.
China itself has two separate positions. First one, as you mentioned, when it comes to commerce, when it comes to global trade, China needs it to be as it is, because it's now the second largest economy, and it's just the one who makes more money than anyone else, even with the United States. So that's a good point. But when it comes to governing the cyberspace, China with Russia is the basic attacker of the statu quo, because today United States just rejects any attempt to share the cyber governance, and Russia and China just wants to be to deal with cyber issues on a body that is built in United Nations, and tries to create new rules and norms for cyber governance. But it's not something that United States would like to share. First of all, there's a kind of monopoly in cultural sense, and also in the technical sense. United States private sector companies own or rule most of the cyberspace that we know today. And secondly, sharing the cyber governance or designing a cyber governing body in United Nations will mean sharing the cyberspace in terms of nation-state sovereignty areas. And it will be the thing that Russia, China, or any other authoritarian state would like to see, an area that they can stop any idea, any
Right.
actor to filter
Most
in.
people don't want Chinese controls on their internet.
Yes, yeah. In terms of cyber governance, China is a real opponent of the current statu quo. Is it enough?
Yeah, no.
Thank you. Okay. Here is well, let me say again. What I am going to do is developing a cyber risk assessment methodology that uses the international relations field as a base and aims to give the enterprises an idea about the cyber risks posed by one single actor, Iran. So this is the point where my research is different. Developing or adapting a risk assessment methodology that is specific to one country is something new, but I believe that we need it, because it's really not easy to, for example, create a risk assessment methodology against state-based attacks, since we cannot obtain or we cannot have a real picture of state-based attacks. This is the framework that I will adapt, and that's how it works. Usually organizations adapt other risk assessment methods, and as I will do, they find gaps in this method and just changes the levels or steps for their needs. Well, this risk assessment methodology that I got from NIST starts with system characterization. That's what the international relations need to understand this new environment, cyberspace, because it's a different environment. There is, for example, lack of governance. Well, we believe in international relations that there is no ruling power in the world, so there is a lack of governance. Even we have United Nations and many agreements and treaties, and in cyberspace, it is even less than the real world. Attribution conundrum means it is never easy to attribute an attack to an initiator. Even if we do it, even if a country does it, well, it's most probably the initiator of the attack will get away with what they have done. That's what we have seen so far. Russian attacks, Chinese attacks. Just this North Korean Sony attack was punished with sanctions, and that was like such an obvious example. But most of the examples of cyber attacks tell us that initiators or attackers just get away with what they do. Deterrence problem, this is an important concept in international relations. Here in cyberspace, we cannot deter by our deeds others, because no one just raises its hand and says, hey, that's me who attacked. That is a problem. So that's the part that I will try to understand the new, this cyberspace's nature. Threat identification step is where Iran gets in. What kind of a security policy creating mechanism does Iran have? How do they apply it in cyberspace, and what is specifically Iran's cyber security policy? How does the sources of idealism impact it, or conservatism? When it comes to Persian nationalism, what do they say, etc. In third step, vulnerability identification step, our data sets get in. First one is the one that I mentioned earlier, DCID, dyadic data set. And second one is the Cyber Operations Tracker for Council on Foreign Relations. And at this point, my data set that I will create will also get in, which is about the companies that are attacked. What do they do? What is their structure? Why are they attacked? What do they produce? What is their political thoughts, political approach? All of these will be applied to this risk assessment methodology at this point. I'm sorry. Step 4, this is at the last version of this assessment methodology. This step is used as a separate component of risk management process, so I will not also get this into my method. Likelihood determination is the step where quantitative methods more get in. Here we will try to speak with probabilities, to analyze the data sets that we have.
Likelihood of what?
Being attacked. Likelihood of being attacked. Impact analysis is the information, the data about what happened to the attacked enterprise. What was lost, and in terms of CIA, confidentiality, integrity, and availability, what did they lose? And here comes the outcome of risk assessment methodology, which is risk determination. Here we say, or we talk about what is the risk of an enterprise to be attacked by Iran. The last two steps is just like the control analysis step, and will be analyzed in a separate phase of risk management methodology. So that's all. Questions and hopefully answers.
So how
Yes,
much?
I'm sorry.
If you go back to the slide before, I was wondering what type of control recommendations is this pursuing or trying to put forward?
It is about the application of the overall risk management process. Well, it says like what should be done at this level of the company, what should be done at the system level, at the technical level, well, this is about how it is going to be applied.
Okay.
It is more like about the companies or enterprises.
Okay. So the determination of different levels of risk would then bring about
Yeah,
different levels of controls to be put in place to counter the risk?
not about the preset of the assessment, but about how the, for example, C-suite level behaves, how do they try to read the developments, and how does an Iranian, for example, decision in international domain will be read by technical level, what precautions will be taken. This is kind of more about the behavior of the people in the risk management process.
So what are the analytical tools that you might use for the risk management or risk determination?
Well, as I mentioned, in the likelihood determination, I will use statistical analysis methods.
Right, but what is, I mean, that's
well, it'll
a
change.
given, right?
It'll differ about the volume of data will be for me important to decide on which analysis method to use. I'd love to use some computational methods if possible, but I guess it will be not really applicable for my for the data that I will create.
So what? I'm sorry. What do you mean by computational methods?
I mean data science methods, or if I can have big data about the state, about the enterprises that are attacked, it will be more helpful to see the likelihood.
So, what would be your response variable in these? You're searching for events and trying to predict likelihood of an event, attack.
Yes.
So, what measure of that historical attacks do you gain? Do you have that? Do you have attacks? And how would you characterize that? Are attacks, every attack that is in your data equal, or
Let me give you an example.
do they have durations? Do they have characteristics, or what are they?
Well, let me give an example. For example, the Shamoon attack against Aramco gas company of Saudi Arabia. It was basically targeted Aramco, but the same attack type was used against Saipem in Italy. And also it had some collateral damage on many other companies in cyberspace. So we have the data of the attacks about well, which company is attacked, which company had been targeted, and which company was kind of a collateral damage company. And then I will dig deeper in why, for example, Aramco was attacked and what makes it a better target for Iranian motives in international field. That's what I'm trying to do.
So do you have the data on all the companies that weren't attacked?
No, that is the problem. That's what I will collect, and I will just try to create my own data set. That is a gap. That will be hopefully my contribution to.
So you don't have I think what is it? You don't have an idea about metrics you're going to use yet. You're going to use from your research and whatever. You're going to come up with just
No,
different.
I don't have an idea how big it will be. for so far I have the companies that I attacked and the impacts on them. And well, there are some more information about them, but the volume will be different.
Okay. Well, one question though. So you give a description of the DCID data set. COT, the COT data set, the cyber operating trader for CFR. Could you comment a bit about that? Because you said with the first data set that you described, it was very limited, right? Because China, obviously, there have been, it's not 23 per year, it's ridiculous, you know?
Yes, but, well, you know, there are thousands of thousands of attacks every single day.
Right, so the question is that the second data set, I mean, how supplementary is that to actually the first one? And then
Well, it's kind of more limited than the first one.
so then it's, the data
Yes.
set is still going to be pretty
Exactly.
much small.
Exactly, but well, that's the problem that I mentioned. Data sets are small. That's why this field needs international relations touch. That's why I will use the foreign policy analysis methods.
Okay.
So it's actually, well, I know this is computational social sciences and all, but the point is, this field needs me, international relations.
That's a joke talk.
Yeah, maybe. But the problem is, well, I talked to 3 professors in this field, different people, and that was like last year. They told me, yeah, I heard about this data set. People say that this data set, that's a good one, right? Yes, I said, it's a good one. I'm sure we need to work about it. But the way they wanted to work about it was the way that doesn't work at all, that I mentioned at the beginning. So this field on this example needs kind of more social science in it, kind of more qualitative methods. This will be mostly a qualitative research, not a quantitative one.
Oh, mixed, right? You still
Mixed indeed,
that's the
yes, you're
start.
right, mixed, yeah. But the bigger part is semi-quantitative, actually semi-qualitative. Yeah.
Okay. One other question. So this is kind of like Iran versus the world, right? Because that's
Iran versus the world's companies.
right.
Yes.
So that idea of enterprises, I'm not too sure if I probably stepped in late, but what do you define enterprise in terms of scale of operation? Is it kind of like specifically
Well,
national security or what's-
Well, the current data, the current attack says that those enterprises are mostly multinational and transnational corporations.
okay.
But there is also a prominent example of Las Vegas casino attacked by Iran, where the owner of the casino just made some bad remarks about Iran. He told that we need to throw a nuclear bomb to a desert in Iran so that they understand what it means to develop a nuclear power. So they attacked this company, even if it was not a multinational, transnational, big corporation. But mostly, as I said, this will be applied by pretty much big corporations, big companies.
With that same justification, though, you're still looking, counter argument, you're looking at, because attacks are going to be different, and obviously what's relevant in one context is going to be completely irrelevant in another, right?
Yes.
Small versus large, or political influence, or despair, or displeasure, however you want to define it.
Well,
One
we have
model, one fit, it's kind of not a one-size
Exactly.
fit all.
Yeah.
So are you looking at creating a general framework for different types of attacks?
Well, we have one attacker here. It's Iran. It has a specific decision-making mechanism. Well, it has a Velayet Faqih system, it has its own supreme leader, it has its own IRGC, Iranian Revolution Guard Corps, and a decision just goes through these steps to the top of the decision-making. And all these decisions just get out of this mechanism. So that is where I focus. I will try to understand, hey, how do they get this decision? And why did they attack this company and then this company? So the idea is focusing on which company and what kind of companies are attacked does really not give us an idea. Sample is small, and as you said, pretty much different than each other. So let's focus on the attacker, the initiator, and try to understand what do they think, why do they spend their scarce, sophisticated cyber attack resource against this casino. That's the idea.
Would you consider that attack a type of international relations?
Well, I would exactly, because
Or North Korea and Sony, or
yeah, I
Yeah.
mean that's what they did, and they, of course, calculated the results. They just dared to attack in such a such an open way. Everyone would say that, hey, yeah, that's North Korea, and let's do whatever we will. And they had their response in international arena as economic sanctions. Is that okay?
yeah. I mean, it's so I know people are also interested not just in keeping people out of the fort, but once the fort is breached, being resilient. Would there be any contribution from this analysis to being more resilient to attacks?
Well, risk assessment is the core of risk management, and risk assessment makes us have the basic idea about what may happen. So this, its own, gives us kind of the power of being more resilient.
Your attacks are, so if you're focusing on likelihood of attack, that to me connotes that all attacks are going to be the same, as opposed to two other ways that you might bin the problem, which could be the scale of attacks across the board. You could have big ones, small ones. You could have a distribution of scales, right?
Yes.
Lots of small ones, a few medium-sized ones, and some large ones. I suspect that's probably what there is. And there's the other question is, as you mentioned in your talk, the objective of the attack is all not the same. They're not homogeneous. A little attack on a big company would be a big attack on a small company, even though the amount of preparation and activity on the part of the attacker would be the same, right? If there's this sort of ratio between the scale of the attacker's effort and the size of the defense, or the size of the fort, or whatever. So, and those are all out there as potential things for you to analyze, but I'm not hearing you. Maybe you have to look at your data to see if you can do something like that. Maybe that's too ambitious, but are you considering analyzing the scale here? And
Well, about the data types, we have this information here. Data, I'm sorry, what
May
you say?
surprise you to
Attack
know I
types.
cannot read that.
That's why you should believe me.
I'm flattered that you think I can read that.
Here it says target type. Here it says, where is that? The initiator, the time period, initiation, the
Duration?
duration,
Is that duration?
the
Okay.
day it started and the day it was ended. And there are also attack types, which are like, does this country prefer DDoS attack, or do they just try to...
How big is the database again?
Well, it is for 4 countries. It is about 150. I'm sorry, 120 attacks. But there's a new version. It includes like 170 attacks for these 4 countries.
It's from 2000? You said it's from
2018. 2000 to 2018.
That's wow.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
this is
Just
about-
for 4
That's
countries.
a number of attacks or number of records.
I would draw my.
Say it again?
Number of attacks or number of records in terms of
Well,
because you have several attacks on the same day, and that
the guy that prepared this data set just had a criteria set that was that made him just choose only the ones that he is sure about being a state-based attack. So that's why we just don't say, hey, all of these are made by Iranian hackers, activists, whatever, but the decision made by Iran to attack this target just is included in this data set.
Well, because it's that small, I don't
Very
think.
limited, yeah, I know.
Because it's that
So-
small, I don't think his stuff is not.
I said I withdraw my question.
No, I know.
Yeah.
Still, I think you have to, right? Because you can.
Yeah.
Everybody in the same group. I don't think that.
I said it's not the way you work. I mean, it's not the kind of data that you like, but
No, I mean, like, still, to some extent, scale. You have some division, I think, in there. I understand
Yeah,
the social
I
science
agree.
perspective and importance of it, because it's kind of you're pioneering this field, right? There's nothing. So, the IR position was always
Yes.
this kind of policy and this sort of interaction, and
Yes.
you're bringing it into quantitative space. You're trying to get a quantitative metrics to complement what you have existing stuff in IR.
thanks for your
But
explanation.
I appreciate that, and I appreciate the importance of it. I still think that his stuff there in terms of scale of attacks and whatever, it's not independent, and it's more of a mandatory sort of, it may not just be, might be playing around with the data, you know, just to kind of explore, right?
Well,
I didn't,
is this gonna be it for your data, or is there another greater data set somewhere you might be able to get your hands on?
Well, as far as I know, no.
Like, so
Yeah.
your dissertation is gonna have to be, this is your
Yes, sir.
dissertation, right? It's gonna
Yes.
have to, this is gonna have to come
Exactly.
out
That one
it
and the
needs
one.
140 points.
Yes.
Data points.
So
it
it's
could be
not.
big points.
Yeah.
Okay,
They're all 1 a month over that period. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, don't do an average, right?
Well, we won't be looking for power law relationships. All right, so, you may not have settled on this yet, but, what do you think your question is? Your dissertation, you're on your way, where are you in the dissertation review?
I did not propose.
Not the book, okay.
Yes.
So,
So I'm
it's kind
here
of an
for your
unfair question,
free-
but you're headed to answering this question.
Yeah.
If you had to ask you right now, what's your question? Process looks reasonable, I don't see anything, all good and all that stuff, but, there has to be a pony at the end of it, right?
Yeah.
What do you think your question's going to be?
Well, I guess, can I assess cyber risks posed by this specific actor towards this specific targets? Is it possible that I just focus on one actor and one kind of target?
Can you
Elaborate
characterize it? Is that right?
Well, can I what?
Is that what you're trying to say? Can you?
Not categorize.
What?
Well, is it possible, or can I calculate or assess the risks posed by, in this case, Iran against private sector?
So
Can I just, yeah,
you're basically saying you're trying to predict the threat vectors
yes,
before they occur.
yes,
So crystal ball
thank you. Yeah.
laying out
That's a good
That's
question.
different.
what
And that's a good
is
question.
likely to happen, and
Puts
that's
you
why I
right
asked
there
my
with
question
140
what
points,
the
but yeah.
what the
Well-
recommendations would be. The recommendations would be based on the threat vectors and likelihood that you do want to spend this much money.
And do they change in time? And do they change in response to, this is all a complex adaptive system, it's a game theory going on, do they change in response to changes in the defense?
Right.
For
That's-
which you're going to need some data, by the way.
Yes,
Yeah.
which I don't have,
Yeah.
and why I just try to create a risk assessment methodology that hopefully can be used by risk rating companies, risk insurance companies, or major transnational companies.
I think we're tripping over the fact this time period is so long
Yeah. But
that there's been so much evolution in this. This is something that changes in the order of what?
The way,
Minutes?
Seconds.
well,
Seconds.
the way that the decision makers think did not change a lot.
Right.
That's our point. Well,
By the way, it's the same
Khatemi
people making the
was
decision.
Khatemi was ruling Iran since like 2000, and so he's always there, and his way of thinking did not change.
Right. So is there any potential at looking at what international relations can do to decrease the risk of an attack happening?
Well, what international relations do to decrease the risk is kind of crisis management, or kind of preemptively determining the sanctions that will be applied.
Increasing visibility?
Yeah, well, this information gives the power to decide earlier and to just open your hand, just to show that, hey, if you do that, you will have this. So this is the idea. That's what international relations will bring as a tool that will help to decrease the risk. Yes, sir.
I need to go back a ways and ask my naive question. Especially for this actor and these targets. What is the motivation behind this actor going after these targets? Is it to inflict pain? Is it to take over resources? Is it to promote a cause or defeat a cause? What are they trying to do that then diplomacy might be able to find a better way to address that drive?
Well, this is hidden in the attack types.
Yep, you gotta go back and try to figure out what they're thinking.
Yes. And we know that, for example, in the case of Iran, we know that symbolism is important for Iran. Showing that they can do something is important. And just making the other side pay, like damaging attacks in cyberspace, it's something that China mostly does.
Yep.
It's something that Russia overwhelmingly prefers. So it just depends on the event and on, for example, remember my data set about relations through the time of between 1997 to 2002. There was this Rouhani administration, Rouhani administration in Iran, and they really did not prefer to just damage the other side, because they were following a dialogue among civilizations idea, and they used to say, we're not at the bad side of this equation, we're just doing our thing to promote peace in the world. So it depends on the decision maker's rhetoric or general behavior.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
You mentioned that DCID has very strict attribution, like it's only included if they're like almost certain that it's whatever the named thing was. Do you have any idea roughly how many attacks Iran is actually carrying out and what proportion these are of, like, let's say, I mean, obviously you would know the exact number, but do you have an idea of roughly what proportion of Iran's cyber attacks are reflected in this database?
I cannot say it, because there are really thousands of different cyber attacks coming from Iran, and this data set is the one that tried to do what you asked, and that's what they have. So I cannot say that, because it's not easy to say that, hey, this attacker, they just declared that Red Kitten did it, but no, just Iranian government told them to do it, so it's not easy.
I think you actually could maybe help supplement your stuff, because this small proportion of data that you actually have, well, small amount of data, maybe because
You're really upset with it.
I'm not accustomed with it. But I see value, obviously. IR space, virtual space in terms of cyber attack, but virtual space is not necessarily independent from physical activity that happens on the ground. So you could probably look at some of these ACLED data sets or whatever, and maybe look at leading up to an event like an epidemic, that sort of transition. You might find roughly some
That's what I'm going to study.
Huh?
That's what I'm going to study over the summer.
Oh, well, there you go.
So there's a data set called IQs. I don't know if you heard about it. So it's daily events between countries, within countries.
Yeah.
Like when somebody from the government makes some statement, it goes into that data set, which is funded by DARPA at some point. And that data set is too large. Like every day they have like thousands of lines maybe. So that data set has like intensity between countries, etc. if we combine them with cyberspace somehow, I think there will be some patterns to emerge.
There you go. That's
Yes.
good collaboration happening.
Yeah, yeah. We will do some.
That's why I'm here, for free service. Yeah.
It still strikes me that you're to be forced to make an assumption that of the total population, this is representative. Of that total imaginary population he asked about, that this is a representative sample.
Yes. We need to start from some point.
Wow, I absolutely, and I'm brainstorming about ways that you can feel more comfortable about that assumption. Like, for example, whoever prepared this database could be interviewed to say, you have access to a bunch of other things. Is this significantly different in duration or something like that? Pick some of your measures in here and say, I don't need to know about your full database, but are the durations of these attacks significantly different than the duration of the total database? Or any one of a variety of other metrics you could get out of here that would help to build confidence that you're not, this is not wildly weird. This is not the dumbest, most incompetent kid in a basement in Tehran. And in reality, this isn't the Iranian government. That's all been in the other database. That never got detected. You know, so that would be one of my concerns, is that this is we would be drawing conclusions about something that isn't truly the threat. Perhaps ways that you can build confidence that its character is not unlike the larger set.
Would be great.
I think US CERT has some data sets that are looking at like probes, you know, just countries that are probing for doors that are open. It's not an attack, it's just knocking on a door.
I got it, yeah.
Trying to open a door.
I got it. Okay.
And
I'll check
Does it do it by country?
Yeah, that's what it does, attacks and stuff, right?
I know that some of their products are categorized by industry, but I don't know if the attackers are categorized by country.
Check. Good. Thank you.
Anybody else? Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.